Obesity has been a stigmatized disease, meaning for decades it has been felt by the patient that they should just be able to fix their own condition, that they alone are responsible for their condition. And over by society, by even well-meaning physicians, in years past would say, just eat less, just exercise more. And people, we know now scientifically that that is not very effective for weight loss, that just alone, eating healthier and exercising, while it's good for our health and well-being on various levels, isn't enough to produce lasting, sustained weight loss. Now that we have this effective treatment, it's been challenging to get it out to patients for various reasons that we can talk about. And so because of that, there has been this other market that has cropped up and continues to exist today that produces sort of off-brand medication that produces something that we don't know is safe or effective or of high quality because it's not being regulated, under the guidance of the FDA.
Hey everyone, this is Jonathan Marx from GoToHealth. I hope you're doing well today. We've got an important topic today. Of course, all the shows we do are important, but this one is about obesity. Obesity is a complex chronic disease that's often misunderstood and undertreated. Limited insurance coverage forces many patients toward unsafe alternatives, like compounded GLP-1s, which are not FDA approved and carry twice the risk of hospitalization. Twice the risk. These patients deserve the same access to proven FDA-approved treatments as those with diabetes or heart disease, but coverage gaps remain. Only a third of employers cover GLP-1s for obesity, and most Medicare and Medicaid programs don't cover them at all. The exciting news is that in 2026, Medicare is going to begin to cover GLP-1 drugs. So you'll want to stay tuned to learn more about this. With us to talk about this today is Dr. Angela Fitch, the founder and chief medical officer at knownwell, which is at knownwell.co, a comprehensive, empathetic healthcare practice that fits all bodies. She's the former co-director of the Massachusetts General Hospital Weight Center and faculty at Harvard Medical School. Dr. Fitch helped create a multidisciplinary medical surgical weight center at the University of Cincinnati and was the medical director of the Executive Health Program and vice president of primary care. If you want to learn more about obesity drugs and what's safe, you can go to obesityaction.org. Before we get to Dr. Fitch, if you're enjoying our show, please leave us a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube, or wherever you listen to us. It helps us get the word out to more people. Thanks in advance. So welcome to the show, Dr. Angela Fitch. How are you today?
I'm great, Jonathan. Thanks for having me.
Good. So what are the biggest risks patients face when they're using unapproved compounded GLP-1 drugs? And first, even before we get that answer, tell us what GLP-1 drugs are and why there's such a craze about this.
Well, Jonathan, GLP-1 drugs are glucagon-like peptide 1. This is a naturally occurring hormone we have in our body already that regulates not only our metabolism and our blood sugar regulation, but also our appetite and our weight. Mm-hmm. And so we have found over decades that these medications have been shown to produce ongoing, lasting weight loss as long as people, continue to take them. And so again, now that we have this effective treatment, it's been challenging to get it out to patients for various reasons that we can talk about. And so because of that, there has been this other market that has cropped up and continues to exist today that produces sort of off-brand medication that produces something that we don't know is safe or effective or of high quality because it's not being regulated, under the guidance of the FDA. And so this is the complexity that we have here in America.
Thank you for explaining that. I appreciate it. So what are the biggest risks patients face when they're using unapproved compounded GLP-1 drugs?
Well, the big thing to understand is that, these medications, semaglutide and tirzepatide, those are the most common two GLP-1 medications today. There's no generic version of them. There's only the brand name versions that come from the pharmaceutical companies that created them, researched them, figured out how to make them, and are producing them, in their facilities. But there's not a generic version. So, but because of the as you mentioned earlier, the sort of hype, if you will, around these medications has been not because not for any other reason in that they're so effective, right? We haven't had effective treatment for obesity in a medication form. We've had bariatric surgery for quite some time. But as
Hmm.
far as medications go, we haven't had this effective medication until we saw the advent of semaglutide, and then tirzepatide came out after that. But because there's so many patients in the United States, there's over 140 million Americans that need access to treatment and they don't have access to treatment. That and the fact that we now have an effective treatment means that there were a lot of these places that cropped up that are selling the medication, selling their services to get people access to the medication. And that's the concern we have, is that may or may not be something that is FDA approved, and patients really don't know the difference. They might think that they're getting the FDA approved version when they're really not.
That's scary. I mean, how would I, as a patient, if I'm interested in a GLP-1 drug, how would I know if something is approved or unapproved by the FDA? I mean, how would I research that or know it?
Right. And so I think the first answer would be to talk to your doctor, right? Many people are accessing this care because obesity has been, if we go back a step, obesity has been a stigmatized disease, meaning for decades it has been felt by the patient that they should just be able to fix their own condition, that they alone are responsible for their condition, and over by society, by even well-meaning physicians, in years past would say, just eat less, just exercise more. And people, we know now scientifically that that is not very effective for weight loss, that just alone, eating healthier and exercising, while it's good for our health and well-being on various levels, isn't enough to produce lasting, sustained weight loss. Because weight loss isn't a normal function of the human body. When you're
Mm.
trying to do something abnormal to the human body, that's where it gets hard to do, right? Imagine, staring with your eyes open and not blinking. We have that staring contest like when we were little, right?
Right.
Somebody has to blink because human eyes blink automatically, right? And human bodies gain weight by nature. And so it's very challenging to keep that weight off long term.
Tell us, how does a GLP-1 drug work? What happens? How do we lose weight by taking these drugs?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we have naturally occurring GLP-1 in our body. The issue is our own GLP-1 that our body makes only lasts for a few minutes in our body. But what happens is, for example, and I tell patients this all the time, that if you think about, say, for example, a large meal that you might eat, like Thanksgiving, traditionally it's coming up in a few
Hmm.
weeks.
Hmm.
Traditionally, we might eat more than we do on sort of a normal eating episode, in that meal because we have such good food and we have family around and people we haven't seen in a long time. And socially, we're eating and, Aunt Becky brings the pie and, Uncle Charlie brings the stuffing, right? And so again, we're consuming this food. When we consume that food, our stomach sends a signal to our brain that says, hey, you know what? I'm kind of full, like I'm getting full and that's regulated by GLP-1. That GLP-1 goes back up to your brain and says, you know what, I'm full. And then your brain sends a signal back to your stomach and says, you know what, I'm going to slow down the emptying of the stomach because it's getting full and I want the person to know that I'm full and I'm going to slow this process down. So that intricate process between our gut and our brain happens via the mechanism of GLP-1, of our own GLP-1. And classically, for example, you might notice when you eat Thanksgiving that while you're eating dinner, you can, have another bite of pie or another bite of something.
Hmm.
But then 20 minutes later, when you go sit down, you're like, oh, wait a minute, I way ate too much, right?
Yes.
And that's because it takes that 20 minutes for your GLP-1, that whole system I just explained, to kind of kick in. And that's the natural way that works to regulate our hunger and our appetite. Now, when you give yourself one of these GLP-1 medications, you're giving yourself, a supra physiologic, we call it. So above the level that we normally have in our body, you're giving yourself a higher dose in order to create that sort of feeling of fullness earlier in the eating process, right? And many people also feel like they're fuller even throughout the day, even between meals as well. So having that feeling, fuller in general helps us then to be able to naturally regulate our appetite a bit better in order to then, be in that calorie deficit and then produce that weight loss long term.
Thank you so much for that explanation. That really helps clear things up for me. I hope also for our listeners. So, I want to talk about the bigger issues around this. Why is insurance coverage such a critical factor in access to obesity treatment?
Well, for decades, it was felt sort of by insurance that obesity is really a lifestyle issue, that obesity is just
Mm.
a cosmetic issue and not a true, disease process. But in 2013, the American Medical Association said obesity is actually a complex chronic disease, much like high blood pressure or diabetes or other chronic diseases. And so, but that was 2013, that was over 10 years ago that was stated, but still during that course of time, there has not been effective coverage by insurance. It's considered elective to add that on as a covered benefit.
Mm.
And a lot of that was driven by the fact that Medicare didn't cover obesity as a treatment. So commercial plans said, well, if Medicare doesn't cover it, we're not going to cover it, right? And so again, there was this sort of momentum around just placing the blame and the responsibility on the patient. And that is what we know now is should not be the case. And we should advocate for greater access to coverage. Last week was pivotal in that it was decided that Medicare, starting in 2026, will be able to cover medications for obesity. And so
Oh,
being able to
wonderful.
say that Medicare can now cover these medications, then hopefully will open the doors for a lot of other commercial payers to say, hey, as a standard benefit, something you don't have to add on as extra, we're going to cover this because it's really the moral, ethical, and right thing to do.
That I'm so glad to hear that that's happening. So that's coming in 2026. Medicare is going to cover this kind of treatment.
Correct. For certain individuals, they're going to start with a little bit more restrictive population of individuals. So you have to have a body mass index, which is a height and weight calculation, right? You
Hmm.
take your height and your weight, you plug it into this thing called a BMI or body mass index. And if your BMI is greater than 35 or equal to 35, you will have access. If your BMI is greater than 27 with certain conditions such as prediabetes or uncontrolled hypertension or sleep apnea, metabolic associated steatohepatitis, which is a very long word for what we used to call fatty liver disease, which is an
Hmm.
accumulation of fat in your liver that can cause your liver to be unwell and unhealthy and lead to cirrhosis. So a lot of these types of conditions, if patients have those conditions along with an elevation in their BMI, they will also get access to care for with a $50 copay. So it's pretty exciting.
That's great. What steps should regulators and policymakers take to protect patients against these really unapproved GLP-1 drugs? Are there things that legislation can take care of?
Well, we in most of our national medical societies that are in the space of obesity feel that, it is something that we have position statements on saying that the risk of taking a compounded drug that's unregulated today is not worth the benefit that it might give, recognizing that there could be some benefit if it's kind of like the drug that you think you're getting, right?
Hmm.
But again, we think that right now that risk benefit favors too high in the risk category and people should focus on getting FDA approved medications, not these compounded off-brand medications that were developed because of the shortage, right? We had a shortage of these medications and that's how this compounding got started
Uh,
because of that shortage. But now that the shortage is over, we really should come back to sort of, regulatory practices that would serve the patients, not serve capitalism and people making a bunch of money off
right.
people that are marginalized.
Thank you. I'm glad you explained that. If people want to learn more, they can go to obesityaction.org. Again, that's obesityaction.org. So, Dr. Fitch, you're the founder and chief medical officer of knownwell. Tell us about your medical practice.
Yeah, so knownwell is the first of its kind patient-centered medical home focusing on the chronic disease treatment of obesity over your lifetime, right? So we see patients for obesity down to the age of 12 years of age, and then we see patients for obesity, metabolic health management, 18 and above. And also we wrap around primary care services around those people who are age 18 and older. We see patients virtually in 50 states, and it's covered by their insurance, including Medicare and Medicaid.
Wonderful.
And we also have six locations, soon to be six locations across the country in the new year. So in-person clinics as well for patients seeking that primary care component in particular.
That's fabulous. And your website is called, what's your URL?
Yeah, it is knownwell.co.
knownwell.co. Good. That's great. And I'm so glad to hear you see patients virtually.
Yeah, we see patients virtually as well as in person in our clinic locations if people are close to one of those locations.
Good. So we get to this point in the interview, doctor, where I ask, what question didn't I ask that I should have? Or what kind of big message would you like to leave with people today?
Well, I think the biggest message, especially with the new year coming forward, and a lot of people, get rejuvenized as far as making health changes, right, is to really talk to your doctor about obesity. Do not believe it's your fault. This is not a disease that's your fault. You're not expected to treat this on your own. Talk to someone, talk to your physician, and really sort of know that there are treatment options. Next year, there's going to be newer oral versions of medication that are going to also hopefully be approved that will be much cheaper, even at the cash price, if we can't, get the insurance to really get on board like we're doing. But hopefully over time, there will be a way out, and meaning that patients will be able to get access to comprehensive longitudinal care across their lifetime with access to medications such as GLP-1.
Good. Thanks so much for the work that you're doing, doctor. It's so important, and there's so many people who need this kind of help.
Well, and I'll just say, leave your listeners with one last thing, which is we should do it for the health of it, not the weight of it, right? It's not about a number on the scale. It's really about long-term health.
Good. Thank you so much. We've been talking with Dr. Angela Fitch. She's the founder and chief medical officer at Knownwell, which is knownwell.co, a comprehensive, empathetic health practice that fits all bodies. She's the former co-director of the Massachusetts General Hospital Weight Center and faculty at Harvard Medical School. She helped create a multidisciplinary medical surgical weight center at the University of Cincinnati, and was the medical director of the Executive Health Program and vice president of primary care. Doctor, thanks so much for being with us today. It's been really wonderful having you.
Thank you for having me.
Good. Thanks, everybody, for listening to the show. Remember, if you want to learn more, you can go to knownwell.co or obesityaction.org to find out more about obesity and how to take care of this. This has been Jonathan Marx with GoToHealth. And as we say at the end of every show, go to health. God bless. Take care. We'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye. Thank you for tuning in today to Go to Health. You are one of almost 10,000 people per day who enjoy the evidence-based health information offered by our guest health experts. You can watch us on our website and YouTube and listen to us on 8 podcast networks. Be sure to join Jonathan Marx in our upcoming shows each week. If you like our show, please share this episode with your friends and colleagues. You can subscribe to the show, join our email list, send us feedback, browse through the online store, and view our library of over 150 shows at gotohealthmedia.com. See you next time, and remember to elevate your life with Go to Health.